I want to cover 3 topics that impact on the locational strategy: infrastructure, greenbelt, and why this plan cannot and should not solve Bristol's housing need. I'm speaking today as the MP for Thornbury and Yate, a rural constituency that forms a broad arc around the outside of the built-up urban area of South Gloucestershire. There are many constraints on development: the Severn floodplain, the Cotswold National Landscape and Greenbelt, as well as infrastructure constraints like the junctions 14, 16 and 17 on the M5. National Highways have been very clear with me that their budget for the next period is maintenance focused. They will not be delivering major junction upgrades. And when I have challenged ministers on this point, I've had a similar response. Some of the towns and villages have experienced significant speculative development over the last 15 years with all the problems that brings. Thornbury and Charfield, for example, have seen hundreds of homes built that were not allocated in the current local plan. Local people are rightly angry that the infrastructure has not been delivered to support them. Even on planned developments like Laddengarn Village at Yate, there have been delays, such as the delay in delivering a primary school. The market towns were robustly tested, but local people would tell you that they are still playing catch up for the development that has already happened. So it's vital that this plan takes account of the infrastructure constraints that exist, and that the infrastructure needed is delivered upfront, not years later. I ask you to make sure that this happens. Turning to Greenbelt, I won't repeat the comments I submitted on the various site allocations. Today I want to make some broader points. Firstly, it's vital that we protect the narrowest parts of the Greenbelt. It exists to stop our towns and villages being swallowed up by Bristol, and the narrowest parts are where that purpose is under the most pressure. Secondly, while I know that not everyone agrees with the sites chosen, we can surely agree that the remaining Greenbelt must be protected. Indeed, the release of some land makes protecting what remains even more important. The deal this plan tries to make is that by allocating sites, it protects the remaining unallocated land. For example, in the east of my constituency, the plan says effectively, don't go east of Syston or Pucklechurch. Don't let the development spread down into the Boyd Valley where it can threaten the Cotswold National Landscape. Keep it adjacent to the urban area and don't let it breach the Pucklechurch Ridge. To take another example, the corridor of Greenbelt between Lyde Green and Yate is one of the narrowest sections of the Greenbelt. If the development allocated in this plan north of Lyde Green goes ahead, it narrows even further, making protecting the rest even more vital. That is why it is important that, for example, sites like the land east of Roundways, Coalpit Heath, are protected. Similarly, if we look at the horseshoe formed by the settlements of Coalpit Heath, Frampton Cottle and Winterbourne around the Froome Valley, this is a very narrow part of the Greenbelt, highly prized by residents of the villages, for providing sanctuary green space and benefits wildlife. The Save Froome Valley community group spoke to me. They will not be attending the hearings as they support the plan as drafted, confirming the horseshoe's Greenbelt status and providing landscape protection. However, the government's Greybelt policy is a disaster here. It risks undermining this local plan. It is no criticism of the council because of the timings, but the Greenbelt assessment supporting the plan predates Greybelt, being from 2022. It also does not take into account the allocations in this plan as they had not been identified at the time. My understanding is that in the face of a flurry of speculative applications claiming Greybelt status, that assessment is now being used by officers to decide whether something is Greybelt or not. We could see the Greenbelt fundamentally weakened by the government's Greybelt policy. That risks breaking the deal this plan tries to make with local people, that whether or not you agree with the specific allocations, we can agree that the remaining Greenbelt must be protected. I would like to see the council move quickly to do more to protect it. I would add that, ironically, far from increasing the speed of housing delivery as the government claims, the Greybelt policy risks creating delays by distracting officers from the planned sites and from the new town if that goes ahead. We need the outcome of this inquiry quickly. Local planned Greenbelt sites can't get approved until the local plan is in place, and until they are approved, we will have the threat of planning by appeal delivering sites all over our countryside. Please announce the outcome of these hearings as quickly as possible. I also want to touch on the issue of Bristol's housing need, which I believe does have an impact, a bearing on the locational strategy. There are, of course, issues like the sustainability of the rural locations, which would increase cross-greenbelt commuting. But I want to focus on the people behind the need. Social housing need, which makes up a good chunk of Bristol's unmet need, has to be met as close to the source as possible. As the housing charity Shelter say about the value of social housing, it lets people live near where their children go to school. It promotes happy and productive lives. This has huge social and economic benefits. People can stay close to where they work and grew up. This is backed up by what I hear in my constituency surgeries. Time and again, people in housing crisis express a fear of being torn away from their support networks, of their children being uprooted from their schools, and of being forced to leave the communities they call home. That is why I welcome this plan reviewing the village development boundaries that have remained untouched for decades, so people can stay in their communities. But it also highlights why you can't solve Bristol's housing need by exporting people to South Gloucestershire. Moving people miles away to unfamiliar communities isn't fair on vulnerable people who, with long housing waiting lists, are the ones who will be allocated housing. And that drives not only where social housing needs to go, but also where the market housing goes, because one is needed to deliver the other. It is also clear from my inbox that this plan has been painful for local residents. It has pushed them to the limit. And there are, as I've already alluded to, the infrastructure constraints, such as the motorway junctions, to take into account. So I reject the suggestion that more could be done. The plan could not go further. To conclude, I hope that you will be able to ensure this plan takes into account those infrastructure constraints and delivers the new infrastructure to go with the housing that is delivered. I ask you to look into the question of how the protection for the unallocated land can be strengthened to preserve the separation of the Bristol urban area from the rural towns and villages in my constituency, as the Greenbelt is intended to do. I ask you to move quickly to enact your verdict on the plan so that the allocated sites can be delivered and the unallocated land protected. And finally, I urge you to resist calls to deliver Bristol's unmet need in South Gloucestershire.